Information on the strangers, foreigners from the Contact Reports Part 1.
Contact Report 410.
Then I would like to address something that we, also Quetzal and I, once talked about privately, which therefore has not been recorded in a report. Andreas asked me about it. If I may recite what was said in various conversations, 251st Contact, 3rd February 1995. So two great races of genetically manipulated peoples escaped from the Sirius regions and settled beyond the sun, which means that they settled on very remote solar systems, or, respectively, planets beyond the galaxy's central sun, the Milky Way's central sun. This means that they settled down and established themselves on very distant solar systems or planets beyond the central sun of the galaxy, the central sun of the Milky Way, in order to be discovered by astronauts of the old Lyran lineage, after which they emigrated to the Lyra regions and finally came to this planet in more recent Earth history, where they settled in China and Japan, etc., and formed the Chinese and Japanese peoples, from which various new branches or so-called races emerged.
231st Contact, the 9th of November, 1989.
That is of correctness. More than 25,000 years ago, the real ancestors of the Chinese were immigrants from a region beyond your galaxy, which is why they called it beyond the sun, meaning the galactic central sun, in which the galactic black hole moves. The actual primeval humans in China lived more than 2 million years ago. After the immigration of the strangers from beyond the Milky Way, the much later Earth-born natives who lived in the areas where present-day China is became extinct in the course of time. They died as a result of an incurable hereditary disease that spread when they mingled sexually with the new immigrants from beyond the sun. All this knowledge, however, as well as the knowledge about space technology and many other things, was lost, as was the knowledge about the original origin of the immigrants. From the indigenous people alone, who enlivened the ancient Chinese territories and created certain small cultures, the immigrants from beyond the sun, that is to say the real ancestors of today's Chinese people, took over many cultural values of the indigenous people. Then later again, a great cultural change took place during the Bronze Age, namely as immigrants.
236th Contact, the 26th of April, 1990.
The yellow peoples of the Chinese and Japanese, they are the youngest inhabitants on Earth because their appearance on this planet was only a little more than a cosmic age ago, and that was pretty much 25,978 years ago. They came here from the planet Nisan in the vicinity of Lausanne in the Lyra systems. But before that, and this has only been researched in recent years, they lived beyond the sun on a planet called Kudra, in a solar system called the Nisan system. They came to the Lyra systems and to Nisan 2.4 million years ago because they had to emigrate due to overpopulation. And they found their way to our original home planets through an ancient Lyra expedition fleet, which went beyond the sun and met the planet Kudra in the Nisan system and there again the yellow race.
And where is this other side of the sun? If I am informed correctly, then by the sun you do not mean our sun, and also not a sun of the old Lyra systems, but you are referring to that sun which we know as the central sun of our Milky Way?
That corresponds to the circumstances, yes.
Contact Report 410.
So that's it. For this, I would like to ask you to explain the most important thing another time, so that I can then call it up and put it down in writing.
We should have done this earlier, because it was obvious that there would be more questions. Then, therefore, the direct ancestors of the yellow races, as the races of China and Japan are called with you on Earth, came to Earth 25,994 years ago, counted from today back, and settled in the areas of today's China and Japan. Their very distant ancestors were at very early times or millions of years ago, like the white, red, and brown races, part of the refugees from the Sirius areas, which were shifted to the Dern space-time structure. The yellow races first settled in distant regions beyond the Sun or Central Sun, where they founded large races in the Nisan system on a planet called Kudra and created a huge overpopulation. As a result, in addition to the fact that the planet was slowly becoming uninhabitable, a great emigration took place about 2.4 million years ago, with large masses migrating and settling in the Lyra systems on this side of the Central Sun on a neighboring planet of Lassan. Their planet was called Nisan. These systems and planets in the Lyra regions were also offset to our space-time structure by fractions of a second or seconds, whereas the Nisan system and its planets, thus also Kudra, beyond the galaxy belonged to the Dern space-time structure. Now it must still be said that about 2.4 million years ago, when the emigrants set out from Kudra and moved to the Lyra regions, a certain part also came to Earth and settled already in the areas of today's China and Japan, where also already Earth-born human beings existed. The early emigrants from the Kudra peoples who settled on Earth were left to their fate without any technical achievements, because the transport ship that should have brought the technical materials never arrived on Earth but remained lost. Thus, the immigrants were also deprived of the technology that would have enabled them to contact the immigrants in the Lyra systems. This resulted in them being forgotten. 25,194 years ago, Nisan was once again overpopulated, and larger groups of emigrants were formed to pursue investigations in regard to other emigrants in the past. So they also came across the Earth and the areas of today's China and Japan, which resulted in migrations to these areas on the Earth and the resettlement of today's China and Japan, including the merging with the very distant descendants of the former emigrants and with the Earth-born ones. These later immigrants came to Earth by popular decree, free of any technology, to find a new beginning, which should prevent another problem of overpopulation from arising. Nevertheless, the peoples retained their knowledge and their sense of invention, and consequently, despite the lack of technology, they continued to make technical progress, albeit in a kind and wise that no longer corresponded to the old technical forms. The tendency towards overpopulation has continued to this day. It should also be mentioned that the two yellow races were never on good terms with each other, which is why they were constantly engaged in strife, which often led to armed conflicts.
Thank you. That is clear. But can you say anything else about one of the Hanok personalities, who was also with those distant descendants of the Nocademian line on the other side of the Milky Way, as well as on Nisan?
It is only to be said that one of the Hanok personalities acted as a prophet among the yellow people both on Kudra in the Nisan system beyond the galaxy and on Nisan in the Lyra regions. Unfortunately, however, his efforts were pushed into the background and disregarded, as has been the case since time immemorial with many peoples of the Nocademian lineage, and also with races who otherwise came into contact with it, the teaching. Also on Earth it happened likewise when Enoch appeared several times, of course always as a new personality, and later also under different names. None of the races of the Nocademian lineage was ever left without his prophetic lineage, and that is until today. Of course, since ancient times there have always been other prophets in all races who did not originate from the lineage of Nocademion, and this has been preserved until today, and it will continue to be so. But the Nocademian lineage of prophets remains, even if today and in the future the prophets of the Nocademian lineage who appear, always as new personalities, do not appear in person with all of his distant descendants, as it was the case in former times, when the prophets of this line were still travelers through the world's space and visited the most different races on distant planets. This time is over, because today the technological means of communication are used, and for the first time a prophet from the Nacademion's lineage has appeared, who has mastered the written language in great skill and has written down everything in writing by himself, whereby it is spread in this fashion, namely among all of Nacademion's descendants in the universal expanses. In fact, this form of proclamation of a prophet appears for the first time, which finds its reason in the fact that today all descendants of Nacademion are sufficiently educated in terms of their consciousness-based and spiritual concerns to such an extent that they can learn through the written language. Of course, there is still a need for spiritual guides who make necessary interpretations and also teach the people orally, but this is done within the framework of the teaching of the prophet of the Nacademion lineage. Accompanying prophets who do not belong to the Nacademion lineage, but who nevertheless carry out tasks, are independent teachers and proclaimers who, through logic and rationality, bring those things of truth teaching which they grasp and understand, whereby the deep insights and truths of the deeper spiritual teaching are not known to them, but only those which have been taught by the prophets of the Nacademion lineage since ancient times. Such prophets outside of the Nacademion lineage were also active in large numbers among the yellow races, although it turned out, as with all nations, that false prophets appeared who created false philosophies, from which religions and sects often developed, whose false philosophies and ideas have partly survived until today, which is also the case on the earth.
Aha, so that is how it is. One piece of news is neatly woven into your explanation. I see. I really did not know these things, because I never was concerned about them. But now I realize some of the things you have talked about lately in relation to our writings and books.
It should be said once, just for understanding. All the written material has also reached immense mass. Monstrously diligent, as was Nacademion, the forefather of his races and prophetic lineage, and through his spirit form and total consciousness block, the lineage is maintained until the time of return to the level of Arahat Athersata.
Of course, it cannot be helped. Still, I did not know that written communication could make such wide waves. Perhaps I have suspected it recently because Bernadette made a remark to that effect.
The 3rd of February, 1988, Contact 222.
I think that fear is justified. Then again, I have a question regarding the Egyptian pyramids, because I was asked about them too. Unfortunately, I do not remember exactly what Ptah, Simya say and ask it explained to me, but somehow I remember that it was said that the first pyramids were built about 73,300 years ago or so, but were later demolished because they fell into decay, due to modernity inside and the weather. This applies especially to the pyramids of Giza, but also to many other pyramids around the world. Afterwards, everything was rebuilt, which is said to have happened about 10,800 or 11,000 years ago. At that time, about 300 years before the Great Flood, a certain King Salak was the person in power who ordered the dismantling and alteration of the Great Pyramid of Giza. But again, everything rotted in the course of the next millennia and fell into decay, so that about 4,500 years ago, there was again a huge pyramid work, in which everything that was rotten and decaying was torn away, removed, and replaced. In the process, the main pyramid completely lost its inner structure and design, which was rebuilt and completely redesigned under the strict power of Khufu. So we can probably say that the Pyramid of Giza of today can indeed be called Khufu's pyramid, even if its actual origin can be traced back to other and partly unearthly builders from the constellation Orion, namely to a time before two-star ages, which are reckoned with about 36,650 years, and thus in two forms result in a time of 73,300 years, but this time has to be set before the Islamic Hijra. And when we talk about the Giza Pyramid, we are always talking about the pyramid, which must be seen as the pyramid of origin, even if today we are talking about the newly built pyramid, which is already around 4,500 years old again and is already at the mercy of modernity and decay, and which no longer has the original height of 152.5 meters, but only 146 or 148 meters. This large pyramid is aligned with the others to the constellation Orion in its formatting, while the Chevron formation, I mean the Sphinx formation, was aligned to the constellation of the Lion. The new pyramid, as well as all the others, and the Sphinx formation were built in the more recent times, about 4,500 years ago, solely by Earthmen, by their own forces. The builders were early Egyptians, as were the majority of the workers, who were to a certain extent free men and craftsmen, while many others, who came in small numbers as slaves from other countries, had to do their hard work together with a small number of local slaves. But the majority of the workers were free Egyptians. For the purpose of feeding all the workers, a proper industrial food town was built not far from the pyramid, but also mass camps for rest and sleep were constructed, as well as burial places for the many dead at work. So I remember what you explained to me. Is that correct, or am I in a state of error?
The 28th of February, 1987, Contact 215.
Actually, you are right about that. But tell me, what about what you told me about the pyramid construction? That human forces or human muscular forces would have managed to build the pyramid. Years ago, I was told that telekinetic forces were involved, whereby the large blocks were moved through the air by thought or consciousness forces, which were, and are, also erroneously called mental forces. But now you have said something else. How does that rhyme?
My recent explanation is as correct as the one you were given a few years ago. Both recently and earlier, you have only asked for a specific explanation, but not one that should be complete. But now I will explain to you that human muscle power, and that in total for most of the work, as well as telekinetic powers, were used in the construction of the pyramids. The human muscular forces were related to the people of Earth who worked on the construction, while the telekinetic forces were used by the strangers from the star systems Orion and Leo, although only a few of these strangers had telekinetic powers, so only minor work was done in this way.
This is how misunderstandings arise.
Contact Report 439.
Then another question that was asked to me on the 2nd of January from the United States, and to which I copied the following from the 424th Contact Report of Saturday, the 17th of June 2006, because I did not know the answer.
That is true. For a long time, we were not in a position to monitor all the flights from foreign countries. However, thanks to our technical innovations, we have now been able to monitor the entire 19th and 20th centuries, as well as the first years of this 21st century, without interruption during the last 3 years. The result of the clarifications is what I told you on my last visit on the 10th of June and now. Actually sighted flying apparatus of extraterrestrial origin since the year 1800 until today, 2006, exclusively. Traced back to us Pleiaharan and to the 5 other mentioned, and now belonging to our Federation, as well as to those whom we could not contact and who remained strangers to us. The matter with Roswell is a different and special case because at that time not human life forms but bioorganic androids were involved. Also for the present time, it can be said that if airplanes, also telemetric discs, are sighted in the terrestrial airspace, except of terrestrial origin, these belong only to us Pleiaharan and to our federated ones, as well as to the unidentified strangers. No contacts with Earth humans will be made, and apart from the contact between you and us, there are no further contacts. This will only change when other Earth foreigners will openly land on Earth and officially make contact, but this will only happen after we have withdrawn.
So you have said that in the earthly airspace with regard to extraterrestrial flying objects, only those of you Play Aaron as well as those of your Federated and of the unidentified strangers can be observed. Is the state still the same? That you still could not identify the strangers, and that they still can be observed in the airspace of the Earth?
Actually, the situation is still the same with regard to the unidentified ones, but we do not try to clarify it anymore, because we have gained knowledge that there is no danger for us or for the people on Earth from these strangers. So we also do not try to disturb their own secrecy and to make ourselves recognizable to them, for which we can also assume with certainty that these strangers have no knowledge of our existence, because we always shield ourselves from them in every respect against sight or location, so only we know of their existence. The alien flying objects can often be observed worldwide by terrestrial human beings, because they quite obviously do not have any shielding technology against sight, as is the case with us. What we have also clarified, however, is the fact that these strangers possess the most varied forms of flying objects, but also that they have no contact whatsoever with Earth humans and have never come into direct or indirect contact with such people, and consequently there can be no reports of the experiences of any Earth humans.
So the unidentified flying objects observed in the last months, insofar as they were of extraterrestrial nature, are thus only a matter of concern to you, Play Aaron, your Federated and the unidentified strangers, but not to other strangers from space?
That is not true. No, because since the 1st of July 2006 we have comprehensively shielded our airplanes in order to gain control over how often the unidentified strangers can be observed on average in all earthly airspace during a year. This is a special investigation which will continue until the 30th of June 2007.
Aha. Then since the 1st of July 2006, all observations of unidentified flying objects, which were probably of extraterrestrial origin, have been aircraft of the unidentified aliens. But one more question. Since when have they been on Earth and flying around in the air?
Looking back into the past, we can see that these aliens have been appearing in the air for several centuries.
This, of course, explains a lot, especially many appearances of UFOs, which could not be assigned to earthly phenomena, as well as not to earthly flying machines, because at that time, no such machines existed. Neither did they belong to you, Play Aaron, or your Federation. Because if I take your old explanations into account, you have always been wary of being sighted by people of the Earth. Regarding the unidentified strangers, I wonder if you have not tried to get in contact with them and find out what their mission here on Earth is.
Your words are correct regarding the unidentified flying machines that were observed on Earth in earlier centuries. With regard to the unidentified aliens, the following must be said. Over the past few years, we have made several attempts to contact them, but according to our control equipment, our signals, for reasons unknown to us, always radiated back to us before they could even reach the direct range of the alien aircraft. From this we deduced that the strangers were not willing to make contact, so we stopped our efforts to make further contact attempts. And since we only tried to make ourselves noticeable in the form of the signals mentioned above, but not by sighting or locating them, the strangers did not discover our presence so far. As a result of the fruitless attempts of contact on our part, we are not aware of the alien mission. Also, it is only since 1 week that we have known through further investigations in the past that these foreigners have been present on Earth for a very long time and that they appear again and again in such a way that they can be observed by Earth humans. But as I already explained, there is no proof that they would have come into direct or indirect contact with Earth humans, because for such contacts we did not find any evidence with any Earth humans. These are our latest findings. Nothing else is known to us so far, and we will not make any further attempts to contact them.
There have been reports since July 2006, just since you are completely shielded from detection and visibility, of UFOs that I don't think can be linked to terrestrial aircraft or any other flying devices or to natural terrestrial phenomena.
We are aware of this. And indeed, some of the unidentified flying machines are in some instances a cause of concern to the aliens, while other observations are nevertheless attributable to terrestrial flying machines or natural phenomena.
Contact Report 452.
Then, that now is finally clear. The connections with the Giza honchos and other extraterrestrials are therefore much trickier and more extensive, as you told me. But even so, I also have never asked about it. Consequently, you also have told me nothing about the details. Then, however, I have a problem again. And in fact, with the extraterrestrial aircraft that the Brazilian group had from which I was set about in the year 1976 in Winkelried near Wetzikon. You told me at that time, which unfortunately was not recorded in any contact report, that it concerned a beam ship, which indeed was piloted by people from a distant galaxy, and in fact with poison gas breathers or such, that they, however, were members of your Federation, if I am not mistaken. With the 65th contact on the 23rd of October 1976, you said the following.
Further also, I was able to clarify the events in the Winkelried near Wetzikon near your domicile, so in addition also the existence of that track of a beam ship, which was not from one of our beam ships. With the track discovered by you, it concerns a ship of the Brazilian Private Interest Group, who had sent out a command for the most exact probe of your circumstances. In accordance with my investigations, it was about 5 people who checked everything very accurately. The ship doesn't even represent a product of the power group itself, but loot. It was stolen from a crew from a distant galaxy who landed in Brazil years ago, who had to make a forced landing because of some damage. The interstellar drive of the ship was completely destroyed and cannot be repaired again, at least not by the technicians of this power group. Only the planetary anti-gravity drive is fully functional, which is suffice for planetary flights. However, you saw the same ship weeks later in the Winkelried, where you, on your very irrational search for this, for you, mysterious object, also discovered this, which put you very much in danger. 2 men were in the terrain out there and observed your arrival, which was an easy game for them, because at the time they observed you constantly. In the desire to kill you, they prepared everything and steered you to the place of the planned event. It was your luck that you drove in your vehicle with caution and without lights on that dark night, because it was only through this that you were not exactly recognizable in the darkness that the shot from the gun missed you. Unfortunately, you are mistaken. Dear friend, because the strangers were not members of our Federation, but they belonged to another group of the Giza intelligences and were stationed also with these, whereby they had to make an emergency landing in Brazil at that time and were captured by the Brazilian group. Actually, they were poison gas breathers who all died when their respiration equipment failed. They could not leave the Earth anymore, because their interstellar drive was completely destroyed, which was a work of the Giza intelligences, as we found by experience through the members of the Syrian group. The reason for the destruction of the drive was so that they could not flee, because the Giza intelligences had a change in fundamental attitude.
And the Giza twerps didn't undertake anything, as the ship had to make an emergency landing in Brazil, and the respiration equipment failed, so also nothing, since the old Nazis of the Brazilian group captured the ship.
Their nature and behavior was that they simply gave up lost aircraft, as also they were not concerned about missing people, etc. either. Furthermore, they were on close terms with the Brazilian group, which, however, that already for a long time does not exist anymore, because every one of the faction has died by now because of aging and illness.
All members of this group were former officers of the German Empire who escaped from Germany to Brazil, They were mainly leading lights and henchmen of the Nazi Empire and therefore escaped war criminals.
This was actually the case.
Contact Report 511.
Since we completed our surveillance technology for objects entering or entering the Earth's space years ago and are therefore able to locate and register even the smallest objects, there have been no entries of unearthly flying apparatuses that do not belong to us Plejaren or to members of the Federation. It is also not to be assumed that there will be any more such foreign incursions in the foreseeable future. And what has happened in the last 300 years with such flights into the earthly space has found its reason in the fact, as we have clarified in the meantime, that really all extraterrestrials who came to Earth found their way to Earth by some unforeseen coincidence or, in 2 cases, by coordinate information. The fact that the way from extraterrestrials to the SOL system and finally to Earth led, in some cases, was either due to uncontrollable coincidences or due to coordinates received, etc. Some also came to Earth through curiosity, aberration or by accident, after they unintentionally or intentionally entered the SOL system. However, most of the entries took place because of uncontrollable coincidences and also because the Earth was discovered. There were also flights into Earth from the Alpha Centauri area when the SOL system was approached, and of course Earth was discovered and explored. So it was usually a rare coincidence that extraterrestrials other than us, the Plejaren and our federated ones, came to Earth. Only in 2 cases aliens came to Earth via the coordinates given by very distant Nacademian descendants. There were not any other strangers to the Earth other than those who came to Earth through the coordinates and uncontrollable coincidences. So the visitors were not those who flew to Earth as a special destination, with 2 exceptions. But we Plejaren and our Federation and the ancient Lyrans are excluded from this, because even our very distant ancestors knew the SOL system and the Earth, and so they visited the Earth millions of years ago.
This is familiar to me, because they came to the SOL system because of the Moon, whose path they followed when it blasted out of their space-time structure through a dimensional gate into our space-time structure and settled on Earth. And it is also clear to me that there is not extraterrestrial human life at every corner of space, and that extraterrestrial human beings are not to be found in every corner of the universe, as the human beings on Earth are led to believe by science fiction films. There are indeed billions of solar systems in which there are also planets, but those that carry human life, which is also highly developed and capable of space travel, are very rare in our Dern universe. That is why, as you once said, your Federation is spread out over hundreds of millions of light years in your space-time structure, because the human beings are scattered in the vast expanse of space and it is not densely populated with humans. Often there are dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of light years between human-inhabited worlds, and also only a few of the human beings on these inhabited planets are capable of space technology. The same applies to our space-time structure, and consequently also to the fact that there are not masses of human beings on the planets, but only a few of them in the vastness of our own or any other galaxy. For this reason alone, it is crazy to claim that aliens from this or that constellation would come to Earth from this or that constellation, simply to make some nonsensical religious and sectarian speeches and conversations and to give divine advice, etc. This apart from the absurdity of the fact that there is no evidence of such alleged contacts between aliens and the human beings of Earth, neither material nor photos and films.
That is indeed the case. In this respect, our contacts are the only exception, even if the good film and photographic evidence and materials of know-it-alls, troublemakers and malicious adversaries are not recognized and are called fakes, and also the contacts are called lies and fraud. Of all the many alleged contacts worldwide, there is not any real evidence. And if we leave aside the few real ones, which you know of and which died many years ago, then all that remains of the claims of alleged contacts and messages with and from strangers to the earth are fakes, lies, and deception, as you would say. And if I may continue with your apt words, I want to say that for all the claims about contacts and messages with Earth foreigners, all that is left is a few hair-raisingly, stupidly conceived contact conversations with alleged messages and channeling nonsense remain. That is it then. These alleged contactees probably believe that the Earth foreign intelligences are so stupid that they only come to Earth for banal chit-chat or for feeble-minded messages in the form of religious sectarian divine teachings, as well as for spreading free sexual love, etc. If the claims of the alleged contact persons were true, then firstly, such contacts would be very long-term and would provide good evidence, as is the case with our contacts with various materials, witnesses, photographs, and film footage, as well as brief encounters between ourselves and persons not involved in our personal contacts. And furthermore, such contacts would also be connected with a lifelong and valuable teaching activity, because only for fun or the opportunity to give some brief information and then to go their way again, certainly no strangers to Earth would come to Earth and seek contact with Earth humans. Real contacts between Earth humans and strangers to the Earth can of course be purely fated, and can only be of short duration, that is to say, be unique, as has actually happened in various cases, but then there is not a religious sectarian message connected with it. If at all, a shorter or longer communication can come about due to the possibility of communication, since the strangers to the Earth are not familiar with the languages of the Earth. A knowledge of languages would only be possible if the foreigners who come to the Earth by coincidence were to learn the earthly languages, as is the case with us, who, as a result of a certain mission, we and our ancestors deal with the earthly languages and also learn and speak them thoroughly. So it is a nonsensical assertion that Earth foreigners come to Earth and simply speak earthly languages. This is indeed only possible as in our case, which we have been dealing with earthly languages for thousands of years. Thus it is only possible for foreigners to speak earthly languages if they learn them first, or by using extensively functioning language converters, respectively translators, which, however, require a high level of technical skill and understanding of the languages in order to be able to produce them at all. And it is to be further said that certainly strangers to Earth are not simply coming to Earth to express themselves in a religious sectarian way, or to talk in a friendly way with individual Earth humans who are inferior to them in every respect. When Earth foreigners come to the Earth, there are certain coincidences behind them, and there is also no direct interest in making contact with Earth humans. These strangers are then careful not to be observed by Earth humans and also not to get in contact with them, so they try to keep their coming secret. But if the strangers were interested in getting in contact with Earth humans, they would appear openly and get in touch with the rulers, because then political factors would be of importance. In the latter case, it is the same as in the contacts between you and us, where we have no political or military interests, and therefore do not want to get in touch with earthly governments and military. But we are also not interested in maintaining contact with any Earth humans, to have banal chats with them, or to talk about religious sectarian nonsense. Our task and our coming to Earth is based on a very old mission, which is based solely on assisting the prophets of the Nocademian line so that they can fulfill their difficult task and teach the Earth humans in the doctrine of the prophets. For this purpose, however, no public contacts with governments, the military, and also not with the population of the Earth itself are necessary, but only direct cooperation with the respective true prophets. A public appearance would be very counterproductive, For if such an appearance were to take place, we would be seen and worshipped as gods by delusional believers, while governments, the military, and scientists would be eager to get hold of our technical achievements. But this would not only put ourselves and our home worlds and humanities in danger, but also worlds and humanities that do not belong to us, not to mention the fact that an enormous chaos of warlike power would be created on Earth, because everything would be evaluated in terms of warfare. This is because the Earth humans in their barbarism are still far from being able to use high technology, which is ours, in a peaceful and humane way. So we are not allowed to confront the Earth humans in an open manner, but only secretly and with you alone, to whom you, as the last prophet of the Nocodemian lineage, are fulfilling your duty. You alone do not mean any danger to us, for you are a like-minded person and one who is like-minded in our mission, who, as a result of your great knowledge and wisdom concerning the laws and commandments of creation and the knowledge of the Spirit, is deprived of all that which creates war, strife, humility, dishonesty, subjection, greed, addiction to power, domination, and disharmony, as well as unfreedom, revenge, hatred, and lack of love, etc., respectively. Unfortunately, we cannot say this about another Earth humans in the context of what you have, which is not surprising, since no one else is classified as a prophet.
Contact Report 531.
It is just my way of formulating the facts according to my mission, which is to make sure that everything is said and taught in clear and understandable words. But this is not a habit, it is well considered, because I have to be instructive about the spiritual teaching. Then a question regarding Mars. Besides the so-called Mars face, respectively the corresponding picture, there is also a picture called Mars Yeti, which looks like a sequence from a Bigfoot film. Do you know anything about it?
Yes, it is a natural artifact, as is the case with the so-called Mars face. However, the Mars Yeti artifact is very small compared to the Mars face artifact.
Then let me ask you again about the fact that you said some time ago that you Plejaran and your Federation are the only aliens who have contact on Earth, and only with me. You also said that there are not other aliens flying in and out of Earth. But somehow I can't get along with that, because you have also mentioned on several occasions that there are 3 groups of strangers on Earth besides you, who came or are coming but who are unknown to you, and with whom you cannot or do not want to come into contact. At least that is what you told me several times in private conversations. Your daughter Simyase and Quetzal have also explained the same thing. These things were not recorded in the contact reports because they were private conversations, but I think that this is why we should talk about it again. As I said before, I simply cannot deal with this matter.
I deliberately did not talk about it, and I don't want to talk about it now either. But it seems that it should be talked about now, because you speak about it openly. The reason I kept silent about what you mentioned was that many Earth humans and so-called UFO researchers are increasingly making allegations about sightings and alleged contacts with extraterrestrials. In the last few years, the hysteria in this regard has been greatly reduced, even if certain unfair journals, etc., with regard to reports of diffuse sightings of unidentified flying objects and alleged contacts with extraterrestrials still cast a spell over their bona fide readership. The UFO and UFO contact hysteria should not be evoked again, which is why I did not speak of those strangers who have probably been in earthly space and unknown to us for a long time, and with whom we also have no connections. But when I think about it now, I find that the whole thing is perhaps advisable to be mentioned in the above-mentioned respect, because apparently you too have misunderstood my statement as well as that of my daughter and of Quetzal. It is indeed the case that no new Earth foreigners known to us have come, and are coming to Earth other than those who have been operating here for a long time, or those who have joined or belonged to our Federation. Only in this respect my speech was intended and should have been understood in this way. But apparently I was not precise enough in my statement, which led to misunderstanding or misunderstanding. What I explained was meant then, if I am to repeat what I said and make it clearer that in recent times no new Earth foreigners have come or are coming to Earth. Thus, only those foreigners who have been approaching the Earth for a long time and who are not under our control are and remain. Excluded from my statement, therefore, were those Earth foreigners unknown to us with whom we do not or do not wish to come into contact. And as these fly in and out of earthly space, they are therefore not newcomers, but rather those who have been coming to the Earth again and again for a very long time, and who also stay in this space for a long time. These three foreign groups are therefore not included in my statements, nor are the future Earthlings, who form a further group and with whom we also have no connections.
I thought that something was not clear enough, because after all you have explained about this over the last 2 years. I, like many other human beings, have assumed that only you Plejaren and your federated ones are active in earthly space and fly in and out. The fact that the aliens unknown to you and the future aliens were not mentioned, however, led to a huge misunderstanding in the sense that you Plejaren and your federated are absolutely the only aliens who circulate in earthly space.
This misunderstanding is very regrettable, and it was not my intention to cause it.
Then it is also possible that sometimes not only your flying objects can be observed, but also those of the Earth foreigners unknown to you and of the future ones. You, for your part, do not let yourselves be observed as often as it used to be the case. So therefore, unless they are the secret terrestrial test objects of military form, sometimes they must be those unknown to you and the future ones who are seen.
That is correct, but if they are already Earth foreigners or the future ones, then they are not those who appear again, but only those unknown to us, as I will again state.
So they are not newcomers from the depths of space, flying in and out of Earth, but only those of whom you have spoken in each case, but who were not mentioned in your last explanations. Consequently, it follows that while it is correct that you and your Federation are the only ones known to you as Earth foreigners, and as such, visit Earth. But since those unknown to you and those to come are not known to you as Earth foreigners, you have only spoken of those extraterrestrials that you know, thus of you Plejaren and your federated ones. This misunderstanding is stupid, because this is again material for the know-it-alls, critics and adversaries, who are too stupid to understand that just by incomplete statements and explanations, also misunderstandings can appear. Perhaps it is also our mistake if we discuss some things only privately without writing up reports about them. It is also not uncommon for misunderstandings to arise from the fact that some of your statements and explanations are not complete. But look here, you said this at the 424th contact on the 17th of June 2006. And with regard to contacts between Earth humans and strangers to the Earth, it can only be said again and again, as has been done many times before, that you are the only human being on Earth who is capable of maintaining contact with us Plejaren and our federated contacts. With regard to other Earth foreigners, there are also no contacts in any form between such and Earth humans, for apart from us, there are no other Earth foreigners who would be active in earthly space. And what you say about the tissue of lies of alleged contact persons in connection with us, the facts speak their own language. From this, according to your present explanation in sentence 83, it is clear that I am the only human being on Earth who has contact with you Plejaren and with your federated contact, but not another Earthling. With sentence 84 I understand, and probably every reasonable human being as well, that there are no other extraterrestrial beings active on Earth respectively in the earthly space in any mission-related form, and therefore no permanent contact with Earthlings exists or is maintained with such. And under sentence 85 is to be understood the same as already stated in sentence 83. But the whole thing does not say anything about the fact that through those strangers to the Earth who are unknown to you and through the future ones, short touches and so-called examination contacts might have taken place.
That is clear and correct. And what is to be said regarding contacts of fate and examination contacts is that some of the strangers unknown to us may indeed have touched the Earth. But we neither have any control over this, nor have we been able to observe such contacts ourselves. If, in the course of time, we have spoken of possible touches, respectively short contacts, then these have been related to those that have unintentionally or intentionally taken place with us Plejaren, or with our Federated. However, we do not know and are not interested in what happened to those unknown to us and those to come.
This is a clear and unmistakable statement. But the fact of the many atmospheric phenomena and the test flights of secret military flying apparatus that have been observed in various countries but could not and still cannot be identified as a whole, and which are called UFOs, remains, doesn't it?
Of course, because this cannot be denied, so also the fact of secret test flights of futuristic flying apparatuses cannot be denied, although this is nevertheless constantly being attempted by denials.
Contact Report 533.
So let's be surprised what is coming. But what I am still interested in is to what extent the strangers on Earth, who are obviously divided into 3 groups, behave towards you, since you do not want to have any contact with them.
According to our directives, we have kept away from them until today and will also do so in the future. Just as we shield ourselves from all earthly locating equipment and locating devices of any kind, if I may say so in such simple terms, so we also shield ourselves from the Earth foreigners. The protective shields of our flying apparatus are designed in such a way that they cannot be penetrated in any way, and therefore our aircraft cannot be located. This is also the case when we keep the screens of our flying apparatus open so that they can be seen. But that is never enough to be able to take bearings on our flying apparatus or even register them. So far, the Earth foreigners operating in the terrestrial space, who form a unit despite their tripartite division, have not been able to find a way to determine our existence because all their technical achievements are not sufficient and are far inferior to ours. This is, of course, also true of all the terrestrial technology in this field, which is still far below that used by the aliens. But since they, like the Earth humans, know through the terrestrial media such as television, radio, newspapers and magazines, etc., that you are in contact with us because this has been so reported, you have been observed for a long time both by the Earth foreigners and by the earthly military, authorities and secret services, probably in the hope that they might thereby prove to themselves our existence and our contacts with you. They have not been able to do so to date, and they never will, because they are not capable of such a technique and are therefore not able to reconcile the discrepancy in this respect. Just as all their efforts to find out about our existence have been in vain and useless to them, so it will remain.
Then some of the unknown flying apparatuses we have observed throughout the decades above and around our center could have been from those Earth foreigners, as was also the case at my former place of residence in Hinwil and the surrounding area.
This was indeed the case several times, and if you had asked us about it, we could have given you information about it, just as we always did when our flying apparatus was being observed in the center area or elsewhere, and you asked about it.
Since I did not know that these Earth foreigners were watching me and were also looking for you, it did not occur to me to ask about it. Actually, it would have been up to you to inform me about it as well.
There was not a need for that, because there is always a need for that only when you ask questions about something, or when we find that you need to be informed about certain important events and happenings, and about special importance. Whatever comes up in general conversations is a different matter again.
Of course, always the same. If something is not important for you to talk about it openly, then it also has not to be important for me.
But you were aware of this fact.
Contact Report 578.
In this description was also a photograph of the ISS next to a larger hovering unidentified object. Whether the photo is genuine or whether it is a fake, I do not know. Do you have any information regarding this photo and the observation in Bremen?
Both occurrences are unknown to me because, as I told you earlier, that we are not implementing a total surveillance on Earth and in near-Earth space, nor in outer space. With regard to both these announcements, if it does not concern charlatanry, as unfortunately is often the case in such announcements, such as by falsifying pictures, how this can be done today, and very easily without any major machinations with computers, which is also very frequently the case, or in order to simulate UFOs just for fun or charlatanry by using hobby-based models of balloons, Zeppelins and other flying devices, then probably unidentified flying objects can be spoken of if they cannot be identified. Natural phenomena, as well as secret terrestrial military flying devices, also belong to UFO observations. Next, however, the 4 foreign to U.S. groupings must also be taken into account and considered, which could be responsible for UFO appearances. Concerning this, those groupings should particularly be mentioned, with which, for certain reasons, we have been thoroughly occupied lately. And as I explained to you during our last 2 conversations, this group is particularly active, and indeed both in European airspace as well as worldwide. Therefore it could very well be possible that those 2 events lead back to this grouping. This, nevertheless, only if a deception, forgery, charlatanry, or a secret military aircraft was not given as the cause. In our point of view, the aforementioned foreign-to-Earth grouping is indirectly connected with many unidentified flying objects, which since time immemorial have repeatedly appeared and have been observed on Earth, and about which also many records are noted in our annals. The explanations are interesting which say that Earth foreigners have been observed from our side in the terrestrial airspace for more than 5,000 years, and assertions were made regarding this, which are consistent with the observations made by us in the last few decades. However, it also emerges from the annals that on our side, since time immemorial, all contact with the strangers was avoided, and precisely because no technical possibilities existed to get close to the stranger unseen and unnoticed, and to clarify what and how they were like and where they came from. Therefore, it also could not be ascertained whether or not any danger emanated from the Earth strangers for us Plejaren and for the Federation. Consequently, distance was maintained all the time since then, and also no contact attempts were undertaken. 5,000 years may appear to you as a very long time, but with regard to the overall circumstances and the security of our peoples and Federation, this does not fall into the weight. The necessary clarifications only now became possible for us through the available technology provided to us by the sonar, through which we were able to provide clarity that a danger on the part of strangers to us Plejaren and the Federation can likewise be excluded, as well as that it is not possible of the Earth strangers to penetrate into our space-time configuration. So on the one hand, based on the annals, even in the new time, we conducted ourselves restrainedly. On the other hand, however, also as a result of our directives, as well as in terms of the given facts with regard to the development of their still rather deficient technology and of the behavior of strangers. And so, as we have not made ourselves recognizable to them and sought no contact with them, do we thus continue to behave towards them.
Interesting. You've never said anything, as well as your daughter Sim Ya-se and Quetzal have never spoken of it. Therefore, the whole thing is completely new for me, and I also knew nothing of it. that since time immemorial, so for more than 5,000 years at least, there was a foreign-to-Earth grouping. And that these probably stand perhaps directly or indirectly connected in some way with the Earth strangers' functionings around the Earth today. That really is a piece of news. But for that, however, I have one question. If you are moving on the Earth, like for example, even when you come to me, the foreign grouping could nevertheless locate you, correct?
Not speaking about that. We were obliged in accordance with our directives, because no usable information was available to us, according to which we could direct ourselves in our behavior in no other wise, as we do not make ourselves recognizable to the strangers, and therefore we also seek no contacts with them. That has now changed. However, through our latest findings in such a way that we can now speak openly with you about our cognitions, because with absolute certainty no danger threatens us from the foreign-to-Earth grouping, and they also cannot register our presence. This also means that regarding this, you may now openly write down and publish our conversation. And now, concerning your question, therefore is to be explained that the Earth strangers are also not able to locate us when we move about the Earth, or if we visit you, because you know, however, that even then we are continuously shielded from any view and detection. You have already seen several times when we were with you that you, however, we could not be observed and seen.
That is all well and good, but I still wonder why you never told me at least something of the whole thing. And what you say concerning your shielding from view and detection, I know of course, but I did not know that it is permanently present. How does it stand when you visit me in my workspace? Also to say is that in Marauli in India, the human beings there had always seen Asket when she visited me at Ashoka Ashram.
The protective device is also active in your workspace, therefore, if you were observed, only you could be seen as well as only you are able to see us and to touch us. With Asket, it was a different case, because when she came into the Ashoka Ashram, a bell-shaped protective umbrella was over it, which made it impossible for any viewing or detection from the outside. And with the consent of Asket, if you could make pictures of her beam ship, then this was also only a viewing channel open to you, and indeed in the same way as when you had photographed the flying devices of Simyase and Quetzal with your camera. And that I told you nothing. That had a reason. Gladly I would have spoken to you about it, but I was bound to our directives, which do not allow some information to be passed on. Our committee was probably informed about the whole thing. However, the accountability rests with the entire spirit leadership, which on the one hand was naturally also informed, and on the other hand is collectively responsible for the directives and their compilation and compliance. Since now, as a result of our newly won findings, a new state of affairs has been revealed, which clearly states that no danger exists for us Pleiaren and for the entire Federation through the workings of the Earth strangers on the Earth, the overall spirit leadership issued an annulment of the directive specified by me with regard to the necessity of our silence. Therefore, I now stand able to talk and answer you.
Contact Report 589.
I did not know that you were making an effort in this regard. But now I want to ask something about the 4 groups of people unknown to you, who are working here on Earth. Is it still the case that none of the 4 groups can locate you and thus determine your presence on Earth?
This is indeed the case, and will also remain so, because we will not make ourselves recognizable to them, and will therefore continue to avoid that they can locate or observe us. As a result, all our flying apparatus in the earthly space are shielded against any view and technical location. This has always been the case and will also remain so, because our interests for our stay in earthly space are solely related to your mission on this Earth, which began 389,000 years ago with Hanok, a late successor personality of Nakademian, on Earth, But then some 13,500 years ago, through your other predecessor personalities, Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad led to today's mission. But this is better known to you than to me. Further, the following is to be said about the 4 foreign groups. Thanks to the help of the Sonair, the friendly people of Asket in the Dal universe, which is technically much more advanced than U.S. Play-Aran, and from whose high technology we have been benefiting for decades because we are allowed to acquire it with their consent, we have been given new opportunities in the last 3 weeks to get unnoticed by at least the group that is foreign to us and has been very active in the last decades, that they have no knowledge of us at all. This is because their technology is still very underdeveloped in comparison to ours, despite the high level of development, and consequently they have no technical or other possibility to perceive our presence. In the meantime, because new techniques are available to us, we have studied the strangers in detail and have been able to learn a great deal about them, but I am not allowed to talk about this for reasons of secrecy. But it will remain, as I said, that we do not wish to establish contact with this or any other grouping, because we Play-Aran and our federated states are not interested in establishing contact with these groups, even if one of the groups we have researched has a relatively high level of technical development which is superior in every respect to all earthly technology, but not to ours. So we hold ourselves back in relation to all 4 groups and do not feel compelled to make contact with them, for there is neither reason nor necessity.
Recently, various television programs have been reporting on earlier UFO observations, and also on various strange UFO encounters. To my knowledge, at least as you told me earlier, all these observations and encounters are not connected with you Plei-Aran in one single case.
We on Earth have never been involved in such observations and encounters since ancient times. However, we are well aware that incidents concerning observations and encounters have taken place in connection with Earth humans and unknown flying objects, or UFOs, as the common name is. But we only know this since we have had the opportunity to do so in the last 1.5 decades through the technology of the Sonair. Before that, we were unfortunately deceived in many ways by many imaginative Earth humans through lies and deception, as well as charlatanism and also fun. Only with the technology of the Sonair we were able to clarify that many Earth humans, who reported alleged observations and encounters, or even alleged contacts with Earth foreigners, only told lies and charlatanism, as well as fraud with fake pictures and films. Others, on the other hand, invented alleged experiences, and even inflicted strange little injuries on their bodies, which they described as marks and signs, etc., added to them by Earth foreigners. Many of these people were addicted to the desire for renown, as is also the case today, along with religious and sectarian motives and financial profit motives. But when Earth humans have observed flying objects or UFOs unknown to them, and encounters with such flying apparatus have taken place, and are still taking place around the world, then these refer today and in the future only to the 4 foreign groups and in no way to us, the Plei-Aran or our federated ones. But if we behaved in such a way that our flying apparatus could be observed by Earth humans, then this was unintentional and therefore providential, as in the case of the German woman Elsa Schroeder, who unexpectedly met my daughter Simya-Se outside Zahedan in Persia on the 20th of February 1975. It was also an unintentional thing, and therefore an act of providence. When you were commissioned in Schmerbule, Maiwinkel, on the 14th of May 1976 to photograph Simya-Se as flying apparatus during demonstration flights, when she was pursued and chased back and forth for 10 minutes by a Mirage fighter of the Swiss Air Force. This was because my daughter Simya-Se did not shield her flying apparatus from radar detection, but only from direct view so that it could be located by radar from Dubendorf Military Airport and tracked by the Mirage fighter. The pilot blindly flew around Sim Yase's flying apparatus without being able to see it himself, as he only flew around it following radio instructions from the radar observers. The reason why core group and passive group members were able to take pictures of our flying apparatus was that we opened our screens wedge-shaped, especially for them, so that the members could expose their films. This also applied to the man who took the pseudonym Pergler and who was allowed to take some pictures near the center in 2001. However, we only allowed such pictures from a certain distance, so pictures could never be taken in the quality you were able to take according to our instructions in order to have proof of our existence and your statements. But even in this way, we were always careful that we could not be observed, so that there was also only a wedge-shaped channel of vision from the flying apparatus to your picture or film camera, and thus open to your eyes. Accordingly, our flying apparatus could also not be observed by other persons, even if they were standing right next to you.
Contact Report 718.
But that is not a bad thing. Besides, I have never asked about it before, but only now because I was asked about it. But now I have another question, regarding the many sightings of unknown flying objects around the world, which have been observed again and again for centuries. This was particularly the case in the last century, as well as in the new millennium. But I must not forget the Foo Fighters during the last World War, nor the objects that we have been able to observe here in the center over all these years, and also at the present time, but which were not from you. The question is whether you Plejaren ever had anything to do with all the other objects that have been observed again and again around the world. I am thinking particularly of the objects that were observed in the USA, in South America, throughout Europe, and specifically the triangular objects that became known in Belgium, but also in 1976 in Persia, where the military pilot Jafari Parvich, and in 1984 or so in Peru, the military pilot Oscar Santa Maria chased after the objects.
No, we Plejaren never had anything to do with it, because without exception, these flying apparatuses observed everywhere, called UFOs by Earth humans, did not belong to us, but to the aliens who have been working on Earth since time immemorial. If we could be observed and photographed, then we deliberately allowed this to happen only to members of your groups or to persons who were friends of yours, while we specially commissioned you to take pictures and films of our flying apparatus. In doing so, we were also always careful that the strangers could not gain any knowledge of this and make absolutely no observations, because we did not want to give any encouragement for them, as we do not now and will not in the future, to record our presence, because we do not want to endanger our homeland, and therefore we are not allowed to make any contact with the strangers. Establishing contact with any strangers always means insecurity and danger, even if a good relationship is established under certain circumstances, because all life forms are susceptible to overt or subterranean indoctrination, as a result of which a great deal of harm can come about. Under certain circumstances, connections can also result from contacts that can lead to attacks, conquests, and wars, which is why our directives forbid us to make contact with the aliens working here on Earth, or even to make ourselves recognizable to them. If we were to make ourselves recognizable to them in any way, then on the one hand we would violate our directives. On the other hand, we would run the risk of betraying our space-time structure and thus also our homeland and, in addition, under certain circumstances, we would relapse into the old behavioral patterns of our early ancestors due to the influences of the strangers. We Plejaren are also human beings and still burdened in our deepest character with unpleasant impulses, even though we have been making great efforts for more than 52,000 years to work them out and to dissolve them. But this takes a very, very long time and always means that there is a danger that through indoctrinating influences of other mentalities in one case or another, relapses into the old patterns of behavior could occur. This is fundamentally the fact of our strict restraint in every respect towards foreigners. What you asked about the flying objects of all kinds and sizes of the aliens, which have been observed by Earth humans again and again for centuries, even in the present time, and also by you in the center and by members of the association everywhere, that therefore never had and never has anything to do with us Pleioran, because we have no connection whatsoever with the aliens. It is true that they have a very high level of technology, but it cannot be compared with ours, and is still very much in need of development. This does not mean, however, that their mentality is also at a higher level of development, which, according to our long-term research, is not the case either. In the end, it must be said once again that all observations of unknown flying objects, etc., since all times, as is also the case at the present new time, can only be traced back to the strangers with whom we have no contact whatsoever, and who are also unable to perceive our existence and presence. Our highly developed technology denies them any possibility of being able to locate us in any way or perceive us in any other way.
I know that, and I guess it is good that you have brought these things out in the open, so they are also put in writing for once. Might be interesting if the strangers called me once, which I do not think they will, though I would not be a danger to them, and would also keep quiet about it if I had to.
It could certainly be interesting, though we Pleioran would have to stay out of it in every respect. I wouldn't have any qualms for you either, because you don't have the same big problems as us Pleioran in terms of the danger of reversion, because you are in with my father.
Please do not, because that does not belong here and shouldn't be said officially. But of course, I think that these strangers will not let themselves be seen with me, even if it would be interesting. I could imagine, though, that for some reason the bulks might shy away from it and be afraid in terms of their safety.
Which would be completely illusory if you were contacted, though.
Contact Report 719.
Good. Then I will leave that out and not write it when I call up the conversation. But one more question. What about when I leave? Because a few days ago we talked about the strangers, and you clearly said that you would not let them locate you. How is it then, if you appear here in my office or somewhere else or go away again, which would also be like this with me? Somehow, when you come and go, there is a small dimensional gate through which you can pass, and I wonder if the foreigners, you used to call them Earth foreigners, cannot detect this because there are energies involved that are certainly detectable, or...
Of course, it is correct that energies are important, but as we know, the foreigners cannot detect them because they are of a completely different nature than all those who exist in this space-time structure and in its past and future. The energies we use correspond to far higher values and are therefore also not perceptible with any techniques from this space-time present, as well as its past and future, which is also the reason why the strangers cannot locate us in any way. I am also unable to detect our present here, because we use the same kind of energy for our personal protection, to be protected against sight, and to be imperceptible in every way through our physical, psychological, and consciousness-swinging waves. This energy and the use of this technique does not correspond to one of our Pleioran achievements, but to one of the Sonair.
Contact Report 723.
Please, we really do not need to talk about that. And besides, you've already said something that should not have been. But you can certainly let that pass, which is why I'm calling your bluff, because I assume it will not be particularly noticeable. But I can explain to you what you would like to know, as I can to all of you, because Svath has told me that if you ask about it, but only in this case, then I may talk about it. but otherwise I must remain silent, by which I mean towards the human beings of Earth. So for me, the silence is still valid in the matter of these UFOs, and also in relation to various other things, and just until the end of my life, as it is valid in this respect for you also in relation to the Earthlings. Even if you now know about much more through the opening of the gigantic library. And also I may still reveal to you a few things in relation to the 3 different forces, as you call the strangers, that are circling around in earthly airspace.
It is really a lot of knowledge that is recorded in my father's annals and also stored immeasurably in the library, which we are now dealing with in detail, and because of which I have not come here for such a long time, because I first had to deal with the introductory things. Just the very accurate predictions for the past and the present time, as well as the further predictions that are valid until the 4th millennium, which my father and you made together in the 1940s and recorded in writing, as well as everything that was already stored in the library 1 to 2 million years ago, has happened so far. Since then, all the predictions have been fulfilled on our worlds, as well as on Earth, without any deviations, whereby even this kind of predictive, monstrous, and very exact explanations and statements have never before come before my eyes during my entire lifetime. And the fact that you knew of all the knowledge stored in inconceivable measure, but never let me. My daughter Simyaya Se and Quetzal, and also to Earth humans, know anything about it requires, in relation to your taciturnity, unspeakably much more than can be expected of a human being as bearable. For myself, I would have doubts whether I could create this ability of silence for this purpose, and in this way it will probably also happen to all other human beings of our peoples, and even more so to the human beings of Earth, who, I think, could neither understand this fact nor exercise it themselves. What you have learnt from my father Svath concerning silence, as well as the fact that you have always kept to it, and that you have also very often pretended to be ignorant in many ways, also towards me and Simya Se as well as Quetzal, etc., that I consider to be an achievement which I can only describe as phenomenal. Your many-sided knowledge, which also relates to the future of the Earth and humanity, and to the consequences of its overpopulation, to which I want to elaborate.
Contact Report 724.
I am interested in that, so I will read it then. But first I would like to say that I am very surprised how much more you know about the strangers on Earth and elsewhere than I and all us Plearan have known up to now. This is evident from further annals of my father, which we have in the meantime found in his legacy, hitherto closed to us, the seal of which opened independently after your last appearance with us, which we cannot explain. Through the opening of the seal, however, we have now gained new and extremely astonishing information, and now know that after my father's departure, we neglected various things that would have been important to do, because we did not know what task he really had to fulfill, how very extensive this was, and his entire knowledge with regard to manifold things, which he also taught you. And the main neglect that affects us Plearan as a whole as a planet-wide population has been our lack of effort in relation to more intensive learning, following and adherence to the teaching of the truth, teaching of the creation energy, teaching of the life. It was only through your efforts in bringing the teaching back to our minds in an understandable way that we were reawakened and actively encouraged to learn and adhere to all the necessary values, which were slowly and steadily becoming more careless, energetic, indifferent, and apathetic over the ages. However, through your efforts, through your untiring work of the new elaboration of the teaching, which we spread and taught in all our nations, everything changed very quickly. Consequently, in only about 45 years, a state was reached which corresponds again to that when the teaching was in full bloom. In addition to all the positive things that have come about among all our peoples as a result of the efforts of your doctrine reconstitution, our knowledge is now also being expanded in many respects through the opening of my father's secret legacy. For already all the knowledge that we have gained through my father's secret annals in the last few weeks is yielding extremely important insights for us, such as, for example, with regard to the existence of the many kinds of aliens who have been working on Earth since time immemorial, about which you also have much better knowledge than we do. This is precisely because my father Svath also taught you about this. But you not only had to keep silent about it to us, but the Earth humans were also involved in this way, and must also remain so. But for this purpose, according to his records, you are commissioned by him to initiate us into this knowledge, when the time shall be ripe for it, whereby, however, this is to be determined by you.
Yes, I know, and this time refers to the fact that I am to explain to you, and thus to you, all that which Svath, as a confidant, has instructed me to communicate to you for the preservation of your peaceableness, the time being when you will again find your way comprehensively to the observance of the teaching. And that is indeed what has happened.
Then perhaps I may also ask now, as this is laid down in my father's annals, that you will enlighten us as to what extent, for us Plejaren, our security as to our peace and our personal peacefulness, and all the conduct connected therewith would be jeopardized if we were to make ourselves recognizable to the strangers who have been on Earth from time immemorial and who are not necessarily of a peaceful and humane nature.
There is nothing wrong with that, and besides, it is my duty, laid upon me by Svath, to do so at the correct time, which has now come. I must, however, elaborate a little and also include the 16th question of Mr. concerning the Geezer intelligences and Ashtar Sharan, for they have behaved in the same way as you towards the strangers here on Earth. Namely, in such a way that they have kept away from the strangers and have done everything so that they could never grasp even one iota of their presence. Ashtar Sharan, if I speak of this one first, was a criminal, yes, criminal, I would even like to say, who then lost his life in the Dal universe, and whose correct name was Ashtashran, for which, however, I do not know the meaning. Ashtashran, like the Giza intelligences, also belonged to the split-off old Pleiadian splinter group, which had already departed to our Dern universe more than 22 million years ago and was up to mischief in it. In particular, the Giza intelligences were in some respects malevolent elements, while Ashtashran was also evil in other ways, spreading an impulse-driven delusion of belief about his person among the Earthlings. Now, just as you Plejaren of today exercise caution and secrecy towards the strangers on Earth, these two groups were also careful never to make themselves known to the strangers, which they have succeeded in doing extensively and without any problems throughout the ages, so that the strangers still do not know of their former existence, just as they do not know of yours. And the trick of the two groups, the Ashtashran alias Ashtar Sharan and the Giza intelligences, was that they were only in our presence when they caused mischief, whereas they were resident in another space-time plane and only came into our presence temporarily and unnoticed by the strangers. So that is one thing, while on the other hand your Plejaren existence must now also be addressed, for which a few things need to be explained. Firstly, as far as I know, the strangers on Earth have never been able to ascertain the existence of the Giza intelligences themselves, but have at most heard of them and, as a result, even assumed, because they themselves could not perceive them. Because the Gizairs, according to their old Plejaren technique, were able to shield themselves against any locating etc., as you Plejaren are also wont to do today, that the speeches would only correspond to suppositions or a fib. And as far as Ashtashran alias Ashtar Sharan is concerned, as far as I know he was never in our presence anyway, but worked on his confused believers on Earth from another space-time plane. As for you, Plejaren, regarding a possible danger to you, your peace and tranquility, etc., I can only say what your father Svath explained to me, and urged me to pass on to you. His explanations were that the Plejaren Ur ancestors several million years ago were already much more advanced in terms of technology and development, and had advanced these techniques even further than the various aliens on Earth. So this means that you Plejaren are far and away superior to the aliens in terms of your technical achievements, as we Earthlings say. This means that the aliens, even though they possess a highly developed technology that seems extremely futuristic to Earthlings, are still very far behind your Plejaren technology, and can do you no harm whatsoever if you continue to behave as you have done up to now, keeping back from them, not letting them recognize you and not letting them locate you. This is just the way the Gizaler have also kept it, whose existence has thus never become known to the foreigners. It is also to be explained that you Plejaren in your Ankar universe in the Cirrus dimension remain absolutely safe from the foreigners on the Earth, if you continue to keep to your directives, which prescribe that you do not make any contact with foreign peoples and inhabitants of other planets, etc. In this way, and you know this very well, dear friend, as all Plejaren also know, you also protect yourselves from falling back into the old barbaric behavior, as it still prevailed with you more than 52,000 years ago, and was marked by strife and war. And it is also worth mentioning that if the foreigners who are functioning on Earth should be able to penetrate other universes of our creation, they would first have to find out which of the 6 other universes outside ours it is that you Plejaren exist in. And if they were to find that out, then the even bigger problem would be to find that dimension or space-time structure in the Cirrus dimension that is a fraction of a second out of phase with our Dern dimension space-time structure. But that corresponds to a myriad of possibilities, just as it corresponds to a myriad of possibilities to find the dimensional gate that you use every time you beam back and forth between Era and Earth. That, dear friend, is for the time being probably enough initial information that Svath has instructed me to give you at the correct time. And in this, I think that this information given by him is to be the only information openly mentioned in reports of conversations. At any rate, that is my estimate of what your father has instructed me to pass on to you. For everything else is intended only for you Plejaren, but not for others, so also not for the human beings of Earth.
Contact Report 230.
Something else. In 1978, Jacobus and I were with the dubious Hans Ulrich Lenzlinger in Hung, because Jacobus was looking for a job with him. 1 year later, Lenzlinger was shot dead, whereby it was said that the Stasi of the GDR had done it, but this could not be proven until now. Is this assumption correct? And further, on Friday, the 10th of December 1976, Sim Yase explained to me all sorts of things about the Easter Island and its inhabitants, as well as about the Stonehead Colossuses. Thereby she also spoke about machines that originated from extraterrestrials. With them the colossal heads were made, transported, and erected. Unfortunately, she did not describe these machines in more detail, but it would be important for us to know what kind of machines they were. She also spoke of cranes and other devices that the extraterrestrials made available to the islanders. Somehow, I find that it was irresponsible of the extraterrestrials to put their technology into the hands of such underdeveloped human beings of Earth. If I think of your directives, which forbid you to interfere in the affairs of humankind's vastly subordinate to yourselves, to even make yourselves visible in a real form, or to make contact with them, then I do not understand the actions of those extraterrestrials who allowed themselves to engage with the islanders.
This open engagement with Earth humans who were still so primitive is also incomprehensible to us. So we can only surmise the assumption that the far-traveled people must have been refugees who settled with the islanders in order to have a place of refuge with them that was not anticipated there by persecutors. This assumption is also based on the fact that the foreigners did not make their actual high technology available to the islanders, as you call them, because the machines Sim Yase reported on were primitive constructions made of palm wood. At that time, the Easter Island was densely forested with palm trees, which were cut down in masses until extinction. The palm wood was used for the construction of primitive machines, which Simyase told you about. Hence the heads sculptured, that is to say, chiseled out of lava rock, were for transportation hoisted onto machines made of palm wood and transported with them. When the head colossi created by stonemasons were finished, round tree trunks were shoved under the figures, which were made with lianas, various climbing, woody, usually tropical vines, etc., to a trunk-dragging sledge. However, these triangularly manufactured trunk-dragging sledges did not rest on the ground, but on further palm wood trunks, which were likewise triangular and arranged in a long row up to the destination. In this way, the head colossi could be transported over long distances as if on rails. And so, that the head figures, weighing many tons, could glide properly on the debarked palm wood trunks, they were both smeared with greasy things and continuously wetted with water. The power of movement of the trunk-dragging sledges was a large number of human beings, who pushed these dragging sledges with wooden poles jerkily, while others pulled the whole thing forward on long ropes made of lianas, etc., in order to then place the heavy structures on prefabricated platforms. Ramps were built from lava stone on which the head giants were shoved, after which the trunk-dragging carriage with the stone colossus resting on it was lifted centimeter by human power and continuously supported underneath again with lava stones. In addition, from behind first small and then ever larger palm wood poles were shoved under the dragging sledge, and thereby everything was prevented from falling back. In addition, further ropes were attached to the uppermost part of the stone head, which extended to the front and were pulled by human beings, whereby overall a crane procedure resulted. These were the machines Simyase reported on. And with regard to Lenzlinger, in fact, he was murdered by a prolific professional murderer of the GDR Stasi.
Aha, so yes. And regarding Easter Island, we misunderstood everything, because we were assuming that the aliens had made their own machines available to the islanders. So everything looks different, of course. One more question about the Eve Adam apple. Simyase said that at the place where Adam was conceived, there were no apples. Where do actually those originate that we have in Europe today?
The foreigners actually only revealed instructions and cognitions regarding how the still very primitive Earth humans could build their own devices and primitive machines for their use by the simplest means and develop a special technique. Concerning the apples, in fact, there were no apples in the area where Adam was conceived. Concerning the European apples, these originate from the area of Alma-Ata in the Soviet Union. The primary ancestor form of the apples was the wild apple Malus sieversii, if I am not mistaken.
Contact Report 272.
Thank you. Good. Well, it was on the 8th of May, on the evening of the Passive General Assembly, when Klaus Wentz, a passive member from Germany, showed me a photo and various enlargements of it. On the picture, you could see him and the passive members Philip McCaney and Rita Keown from Canada, photographed by the German passive member Bernhard Kellner. Well, in the photo taken above the Simyase Silver Star Center, there was something like a small gray-black cloud in the background above a spruce top, which at first glance could not be defined as anything specific. Only the enlargements of the little cloud resulted in something interesting. Namely, an object became visible, which for me was clearly a beam ship of your design. The photo was taken on the 9th of May, 1998, at 13 HRs, during lunchtime at last year's Passive General Assembly. Now for my question. Is it possible that one of you was wandering around in the center environment at that time, and let yourself be captured on the film, willingly or unwillingly? Do you know anything about it, or can you inquire about it?
The passive members Philip McCaney, Rita Keown, and Klaus Wenz, taken on 9th May 1998, 13 HRs, during the lunch break at the 9th Passive Members General Assembly. Photo Bernhard Kellner. Copy of an enlargement of the original photograph taken in the photo lab of a friend of Rita Cahugan's in Canada.
I remember this very well. Because Florina and I were flying in your airspace at the time, because we were observing foreign flying apparatuses that were also flying around in your immediate and wider airspace. Like ourselves, they were shielded from any view to humans from the Earth, so neither these foreigners nor ourselves could be observed. Our advanced technology also allowed us to remain invisible to the foreigners, so they had no idea of our presence. But if our flying apparatus is still visible in the picture you mentioned, then this could only be captured on film for a tiny fraction of a second, at a moment when the automatic safety system changed the frequency of the visual protection shield. A process that can become necessary when foreign objects, for which you want to remain invisible and unlocatable, get too close. However, if the flying apparatus becomes visible for a tiny fraction of a second during such an operation, this only happens on the side facing away from the foreign object, which ensures that our flying apparatus cannot be seen or located. But if our flying apparatus was photographed by the person you mentioned, then this corresponds to an almost unbelievable luck and a coincidence that occurs only once among millions of similar cases, when the automatic visual protection switch is delayed for a fraction of a second.
Legendary. And the foreigners? What kind of beam ships or flying apparatus do they have, and what do they want?
Their flying apparatuses bear a certain resemblance to ours and could therefore easily be confused by the uninitiated and ignorant. What the foreigners want is easy to explain. They appear once every 70 to 80 years on the Earth, taking care of all sorts of things that reach into political as well as military and scientific matters, whereby their aim is to make an official appearance at the appropriate moment and to establish open contact with the Earth humans.
And were there contacts with them at earlier times? That is to say, did these foreigners interfere in the earlier concerns of the Earth humans?
That was to some extent the case, yes.
And can you please tell me something about these foreigners, for example, what they look like and where they come from? And why did you not ever tell me about them?
Contact Report 275.
Of course, thank you very much for that. But one more question in this respect. What has arisen with regard to the photo of Barbara and Andreas, who took a photo on the 14th of July 1999 southeast of Colmar in Alsace, in the direction of Ensisheim-Ungersheim, on which, in my opinion, as you can see here from these computer pictures taken by Piero, a beam ship is to be seen. Was there someone of you there, and had themselves photographed?
I answered your question yesterday and clarified the case. No, it was not any of us in that airspace at that time, but we registered that those strangers were in that airspace that we were also observing at the time when the passive members above Schmidruti were able to photograph our aircraft.
Too bad. We thought it was one of your ships.
That was really not the case. But like you, I would also like to say that the structure here on the computer images is indeed a flying apparatus and that it belongs to the foreigners.
Contact Report 287.
Good. On the 6th of July 2000, Njana circled around in our area. From 1455 HRs to 2045 HRs, whereby we could photograph her, respectively, her beam ship in the afternoon, because she called me and drew my attention to her flying around. Can we find out what she had to do in the area?
She had to make observations regarding the foreigners. These are now increasingly active in Swiss and German as well as French, Italian, and Austrian areas. Also in the Nordic countries, they are increasingly noticeable for us.
And do you still not have any knowledge about their being here?
Both the purpose of their being here and their origin are still unknown to us.
And why do you not just simply make contact with them?
The foreigners offer us too many uncertainties in many respects. For this reason, we must strictly adhere to our directive of not establishing contact.
Contact Report 424.
Very well. Then if unidentified flying objects were seen in Earth space, then they belong to you, your Federation, or to your later Federation, and in 2 cases to the foreigners that you could not contact, if I include Roswell. And as to contacts through extraterrestrials with Earth humans, then all but 1 case laid back to your Federation. And all of the contact persons have died, and none of the ones that have for years been saying that they were having contacts with you or with other extraterrestrials belong to them, and that they also call you Pleiadians. Because at the beginning we said as a precaution that you called yourselves Pleiadians to then later uncover the lies of such persons. Then, when the lies had multiplied, and the world was full of such claims of persons who said they were having contacts with you, we came out into the open and revealed from where you really come from, and how you call yourselves in fact Plei-Aran, and not Pleiadians. All the liars have in this way exposed themselves, even though they are still trying to save face by weaving more lies. At what stage is the general control as to further flights of beings foreign to Earth?
Should further flights take place, although we do not expect any, we would of course inform you. And what has to be said and can only be said again and again and has often been said regarding contacts between Earth humans and foreigners to Earth is that you are the only person in the whole world who is capable of having contacts with us Plei-Aran and those belonging to our Federation. And also in this respect, no other contacts of any kind are taking place between other beings foreign to Earth and Earth's human beings, because no other beings foreign to Earth exist, apart from us, who are operating in this way in Earth space. And no more in conjunction with us has to be said regarding the tissue of lies of the alleged contact persons, because the facts tell the whole story.
Contact Report 428.
It is unceasing. The thoughts just start to run. But before we turn ourselves to the correcting work of Hans-Georg's book, I want to ask yet something regarding that which you have addressed with the 424th official contact conversations on the 17th of June, namely the entry of extraterrestrials into the terrestrial airspace. There was indeed the Tunguska catastrophe in which those space travelers suffered a breakdown and exploded their large ship in the air because it could not be repaired again. Is that also included in your clarifications? You have namely made no statements about that, although it would be interesting to know what the circumstances are regarding this.
The great spaceship, which at that time suffered a breakdown and was destroyed, out of which the so-called Tunguska event resulted, belonged to a people who live in a distant galaxy in your space-time configuration. The Christianity, however, which was brought to their home worlds by some of their space travelers and which rapidly spread out, led to grave religious wars. Once order could then finally be recreated, the space travelers were forbidden to make any further penetrations into the terrestrial space. Around 1,000 years after this decree, as a result of faulty coordinates, a large spaceship of these people got lost in the SOL system and stranded on the Earth due to a severe accident that was still occurring, from which it was no longer able to move away. So, for several months, the spaceship lay with grave technical damage hidden in the Tunguska region, whereby a larger number of space travelers mixed, unrecognized, among the Earth humans, far from the hiding place, and sexually engaged with them, which resulted in many of them becoming sick with syphilis and, with the return to their spaceship, also infecting many others with it. That had very bad consequences for the space travelers because very quickly, as a result of their constitutional difference, dangerous mutations of the disease arose which, just as quickly, expanded to a plague-like disease and epidemic which cost many their lives. They could not expect help from the home world because, according to the old determination, it was forbidden for them to approach the Earth. Apart from that, other extraterrestrials who were stationed on the Earth, namely us and our Confederates, were forbidden by the government of the home world to provide any help. Consequently, we had to abide by our directives. Therefore, only self-destruction remained for the foreigners to Earth as their determination demanded it. Consequently, they built an atom bomb, brought the spaceship to a still feasible height in the atmosphere, and then caused it to fall in order to then ignite the bomb. Through the enormous explosion, the great spaceship was completely ripped apart and torn to pieces, whereby the monstrous explosion transformed practically the whole ship and the entire crew of still 4,187 human beings into dust and ash. Everything was observed and recorded from our side. Therefore, we, of course, continuously relayed our information to the stranded space travelers' home world. However, we did not receive permission to intervene in the events. Therefore, we had to let things run their course. However, we relied on the fact that we could teach the government and the people of the space travelers in relation to the fact that for them, as long as they would no longer get involved in them, there was no danger anymore by the religions of the human beings of Earth. Our intention succeeded in the course of time, which then also had the result that all three peoples, that is to say, races, namely there were 3 of them, joined our federation. They come from a region of a large cluster of galaxies, which is around 400 million light-years away from the Earth. The 3 peoples, respectively, races, have 3 different home worlds. Yet they are closely connected with each other and call themselves the People's Oneness of Barden, as they also call their home worlds Barden 1, 2, and 3, and have a common government. The Bardan belong to those 5 peoples foreign to Earth who I named to you and who have joined our federation.
And do these human beings come again to the Earth in the current time? And the galaxy cluster mentioned by you, is that also known to our astronomers?
Yes, and indeed already since the time around 80 years ago, when they allowed themselves to be taught by us and joined our federation. But since then, they have never taken up contact with Earth humans. And with regard to the galaxy cluster, this is known to the terrestrial astronomers and is named Coma Cluster of Galaxies by them.
And they look like us or different?
They are human beings like us, if that is what you mean. They have somewhat Mongolian features and a somewhat coarse as well as light brownish-yellowish skin.
It would be interesting to one day get to know one of these human beings.
If that is your wish, then I can concern myself with that. Maybe I can arrange a visit.
Contact report 448.
Okay, so I got the call. In Pfeffikon last night, Priska saw a big and glowing object that came towards her not very high up in the sky, then stopped, moved again to make a few turns, and then just disappeared without a trace. In Rila, Victor and Adela saw a multicolored object that first flew eastward, then returned, and finally disappeared to the north. It was explained to me that there were also airplanes on the way, but that the objects were most certainly not such. Do you know anything about this?
No, I know nothing about that. In any case, those were none of our flying apparatus because ours are protected from every perspective, even from all advanced technical and fluidal, that is to say, fine material, vibrational tracking capabilities, both in relation to those that are terrestrial as well as those that are foreign to the Earth. Only if we deliberately make our aircraft visible, capable of being detected, or in any way recognizable, Can they be sighted or detected, such as with demonstrations, as we allowed these as proofs for you, in terms of photographic and film work, or for group members and your friends? Even by all technical and fine material detecting apparatuses of those who are foreign to the earth, also for the foreigners who are unknown to us, with whom we've searched for contact in vain, we have never been and never are able to be detected, since a detection of our aircraft automatically triggers an alarm, which is why we've always had to make ourselves recognizable in certain cases, and will also have to continue to do so, should it be necessary. We have never been detected in such a way in the earthly airspace by any who are foreign to the earth and who don't belong to us, not to this day. And this will also remain so. Also, with regard to our foreign unknowns, that is to say, those who are foreign to the earth and whose presence in the earthly airspace has, already for a long time, led to their observation by the Earth humans again and again. These haven't been able to locate us yet. Therefore, they have no proofs of our presence, that is, apart from your evidence, which they have been made aware of in some circumstances. But they certainly do not have real proof of our existence, because they cannot possibly locate us and our flying apparatuses, not even if we make ourselves visible to you, the group members or your friends, for a short time, which we will not do for some time anyway, as I already told you some time ago. As for our foreign unknowns, whose origin, technology, and task are likewise unknown to us, as you know. It is to be said that at present, they continue to appear again and again all over the world and can be observed more frequently. Also, we cannot fathom why our signals, if we aim for them, are dissolved or reflected back to us and thus do not reach their aircraft. Consequently, we cannot establish contact with them, which we also have not tried to do for quite some time. With absolute certainty, it is also to be said that the foreigners do not maintain any contacts with the Earth humans because our worldwide, all-encompassing detection devices with which we can also detect the presence of our foreign unknowns would identify such contacts.
There's probably no sense in investigating what Priska observed. But how can you be so sure that the foreigners have never detected you?
The expense for the investigations would be too great because it usually turns out that such phenomena concern earthly flying objects, as we have had to determine over and over again. But in several cases, these were the foreigners who are unknown to us, with whom we cannot come into contact, and also no longer try to do, as I just mentioned. And that we can be sure that our flying apparatus have not been detected by the foreigners so far is due to the fact that our highly advanced detection technology indicates to us every detection process in every direction, immediately and without delay, no matter what technology is used for detection.
You spoke of that once and said that this technology, which is unusually high and very futuristic for us Earthlings, is not a development on your part, and neither are your protective shields, which immediately convert all energy hitting them into their own energy, and through this, the protective shields strengthen instead of weaken. If I remember correctly, these forms of technology come from Asket's friendly people, the Sonair in the Dal universe, who are more than 4,000 years ahead of you in relation to your technological development.
The technology mentioned does, in fact, trace back to the Sonair, who have already assisted us for many years in every technological development. Consequently, we have a variety of technologies today that we did not yet have at the beginning of our contacts approximately 30 years ago. So now, very many new technologies are available to us, which would have taken up very long development times for us if they had not been provided to us by the Sonair in good friendship.
This probably includes the Dimension Gate, which you are probably still working on, right? Here, on television, there is a series running that is called Stargate, which is roughly comparable with your Dimension Gate. Only, its appearance and function are a little different than what you showed me 3 times. In this science fiction on television, a large ring is used, which is equipped with control symbols, and in front of this, there is a kind of control panel. This in contrast to your mechanism, which needs nothing of the sort, but which is set into operation just by a small device on your overalls, out of which nothing appears like a gate flickering at the edges, that is to say, a passageway, through which one recognizes the other dimension or the area, etc., that exists beyond the gate. The whole thing works as though one would look through a window, or through a door that would have simply been placed in the open countryside.
Yes, this gate is also among the achievements of the Sonaire, with whom we have developed it. And in addition, it is to be said that the whole thing became so functional a few weeks ago that it can also be used perfectly and safely for the passage of humans. We can move back and forth through it, both in the present time as well as in different space-time configurations, that is to say, dimensions.
And can you also go to the Dal universe with it?
That is not possible for us, but our engineers and scientists are working together with the Sonaire in order to make this a reality.
Then another question about the foreigners, who have already circled around here on Earth for a very long time, as you say, and with whom you cannot enter into contact. Is it possible that these unknowns may come from the future, perhaps from other planets, or even from the Earth itself, or else from another dimension?
We have also thought about that and have come to the conclusion that this may very well be possible, both the one and the other possibility. The Earth humans will undoubtedly create the possibility of dimension traveling in the distant future, which we have not investigated, however.